The morning was ordinary. The cat purring in my lap, a calico named Sophie. For the third or fourth time, the book holding my attention was Brave New World. The coffee was black, a variable that never wavered. A plate that moments ago held a bagel was now demoted to crumb catcher as I chewed the last bite and sipped a bit more of my bitter brew. Sitting at the kitchen counter on a high stool, my leg began to swing. My body always seemed to know when the time was approaching. I glanced at my watch and set down my book. Getting close. I stole a look at the timer on the oven. Oh, Sophie, I wish I had put the bread in earlier. It won't be ready beforehand. Sophie rolled onto her side and stuck out her legs. I scratched her belly. This is likely the point where my ordinary morning departs somewhat dramatically from most people. A fetid order that would knock most people to the ground arrives as the initial sign things are about to get considerably more interesting. Sophie noticed it first and sat in my lap to execute an impressive arched back stretch that preceded her fur beginning to lengthen. She jumped off my lap and backed under the sofa to prepare, her lips blinking over rapidly illuminating green eyes. For my part, I took another sip of coffee, set the plate in the sink, and opened the broom closet. I picked up a crossbow but changed my mind and went with the long sword instead. As the thumping started under the kitchen table, I decided to set a mace and a steel-toe dagger on the counter in case I needed them. Since it provided the best protection during the initial phase of this particular situation, I placed a World War II style steel helmet on my head. The banging continued, the table and chairs bouncing along with the rhythm as a crack began to form in the kitchen tile. I spread my legs out to shoulder width, squatted slightly, and held the long sword firmly in front of me with both hands. It was in that moment when the table and chairs became airborne as an explosion of tile and plywood sprayed upward before raining down on my helmet in a series of pings and clangs, littering the ground around me. I could hear Sophie clawing the carpet beneath the sofa as if reviving her engine. The guttural rumble of a growl was coming from below as a hole began to appear in the dirt under what had once been the kitchen floor. Two red eyes appeared briefly in the void before disappearing, replaced by the sounds of vigorous digging. As the hole widened, there was a series of huffs. Two enormous paws covered in thick black fur emerged, their claws extending and digging into the edges of the remaining plywood surrounding the opening. The immense head of the hellhound emerged next, and I could hear its hind legs scratching around, looking for footing to hoist itself into my kitchen. My phone rang. I eyed the screen. Shit, Sophie, I have to take this. Tossing my helmet onto the floor, I scooped my AirPods off the counter and popped them in as Sophie flipped the sofa onto its back and emerged from beneath as a cowgirl-sized cat. While I always suspect her impressive transformation was more fluff than body, I was never willing to pit her in the slate to find out. I hit the phone's answer button. Hello. Sophie leaped into the air and landed with a thud near the emerging hound. Claws out, teeth bad, she hissed. Oh my goodness, what was that? Are you okay, Margaret? Yeah, I'm fine. I have a guy doing some work at the house, so forgive the background noise. The hound emerged from the ground and Sophie swatted at its face, missing contact as the beast swung its head out of the way. Since my long sword required two hands, I set it down and picked up my dagger to have a free hand just in case my boss needed me to write something down. Sophie seemed to be keeping the hound from advancing, but behind it, two more red eyes were visible below.
So, Margaret, I realize today is a work from home day for you, but David is insisting on a face to face meeting to discuss the new project and a team trip to Dallas next week. He said he wants to make sure he has everyone's complete attention and that his words, not mine. No one is distracted waiting for their kitchen timer to go off. The timer on my oven pinged. Now I am feeling personally attacked. Don't take it personally, I suspect it was meant as a metaphor. I shuffled to my right to get a better view of what was unfolding as I assumed a defensive position, waving the dagger in front of me, ready to pounce in a required direction. What time is the meeting? The second hound emerged from the hole and growled. The two canines stood side by side, squaring off. I took a quick look at the window in the oven's door. The bread wasn't quite brown enough yet. 9 o'clock, can you make it? The first hound kicked a chair out if it's be causing it to shatter a kitchen window. Are you sure everything is okay? I need to go supervise these workers. I will get there as quickly as I can. I clicked off Sophie right. Sophie leaped onto the hound on the right, chomping down on its neck. She rode the bunking canine like a bronco, razor-sharp claws digging into its flesh. The second hound leaped in my direction. I managed to duck under it, its fur as stiff as porcupine quills, opening a bloody gash in my hand as I drew my dagger into its abdomen as it flew overhead. The hound skittered across the floor onto its side, smashing into the counter with a thud, causing coffee to slosh out of my cup and onto the saucer. The hound was distracted by trying to dislodge the dagger, so I ran to help Sophie, checking the breed as I passed. Not quite yet. The agent of Health Sophie was riding stood on its hind legs, leaned backwards and bashed Sophie against the wall. She held on through the second buck as the beast pushed her through the dry wall. Then Sophie began to gag. Really, Sophie? Now? Sophie jumped off the hound's back, squatted low on all fours and began retching in earnest. The beast still on its hind legs. I leaped into the air, landing a flying kick squarely into its chest in a move that would have made Neo proud. The beast fell backwards, its paws coming out from under it as it silently dropped back into the hole from hell. It was as Sophie finally yacked up the hairball and the second beast sent the dislocate dagger skittering across the floor as it rose to its feet. Then I smelled it. The crust of the bread was crossing the line from perfectly brown to burnt. Sophie bread. The cat bounded toward the oven door, landing perfectly onto the handle, forcing the door open. I grabbed the long sword in both hands and executed an airborne cartwheel. About 2/3 through the rotation, I managed to scoop the loaf pan out of the oven with the sword and bat it onto the counter before sticking the landing in front of beast number 2. Raising my long sword, I used my elbow to push back the pot of coffee teetering on the edge of the counter. Dogging the loaf pan as it slid along the granite before coming to rest against the toaster. Sophie scrambled across the countertop as the beast advanced 2 steps in my direction, red eyes penetrating mine, trying to find my soul. As Sophie somersaulted off the counter, she caught the beast's thorny tail in her jaws, sinking her teeth all the way in. The hound roared, turning its head as it worked to expel the cat, exposing its neck as it did. I swung the long sword downward, lopping the hound's head cleanly off. The body of the beast moved towards the wobbling head on the floor. Sophie dropped off the hound's tail as I intercepted the head, dribbling it like a saucer ball toward the hole before kicking it firmly back to hell. The body of the beast followed it in. The hounds of hell never die. They just return to hell to heal. Not today, Satan, I shouted down the hole as it closed. Sophie walked to my side, allowed the fur on her back to relax, shuddered, and returned to her former self. She sat down to clean her paws. Our family lost track a long time ago of how many generations have been responsible for repelling the daily arrival of the hounds of hell as they attempt to clear a path for whatever evil is trying to return to the surface of the earth. Fortunately for us, the hounds are fierce but stupid. I looked down at my hand. The gash was already beginning to heal. Sounds of wood, unsplintering, and tile returning to its rightful place filled the kitchen. The broken glass made a tinkling sound as the windows repaired itself. The beasts appear every day at the same time in the same place to open the hole to hell. Since the hounds have never been successful in their endeavors, hell is forced to relive the same day over and over again. Their return to the depths restarts their day. That means they hadn't been here yet. It's why the damage always disappeared. I closed the oven door as I tapped the crust on the top of the loaf. Looks like we saved the bread today. Thanks for your help. Sophie looked up, her usual expression of indifference occupying her fussy face. I turned the bread out onto a cutting board. Let's hope the scent of freshly baked bread covers up the stench of sulfur soon. There was still a little time before I needed to leave for the meeting, so I sat on the stool to catch my breath. Sophie jumped onto the counter next to my coffee cup. Ready for a pick-me-up? The cup's coffee was cold, but that's how Sophie liked it. I poured the coffee from the cup onto the saucer and slid it over to her. Drink up. I expect to see you sound asleep when I get home. I'm going to take my coffee to go. I pulled a travel cup out of the cabinet and poured generously from the pot. It was this particular coffee bean that gave us the powers needed to defeat the beasts. Family legend has it the coffee plants were given to us directly from God. Our ancestors wisely decided to keep this a secret for fear some random disciple would write about it. As I did every morning when I was required to go to the office, I slung my satchel across my body, locked the door, and walked, coffee in hand, to the car. Good morning, my neighbor Mabel offered from her front porch as she usually did. I toasted in her direction with my coffee mug, good morning. Is everything all right? I thought I heard glass breaking. Not sure what you hear, but no glass is broken. But I could have sworn. I opened the car door and stuck 1 foot in. I'm happy to have you next door to keep an eye on things while I am at work. Late for a meeting, bye. As I drove to the office, I dialed my cousin's number. Hi, Reza. Just got word I have to go out of town for a couple of days next week. Are you available to look after Sophie and the dogs for me? With pleasure. That reminds me, I talked with your mother last week and she was just saying how much she misses interacting with the dogs sometimes. Mind if I bring her along? Not at all. Just make sure she stays on the sidelines. We would hate for her to break a hip or something. It's a deal. Thanks. In another indication of my ordinary day, I once again hit every red light on the way to work.